Ken Whiting with Paddle TV with yet another paddling tip. And this one deals with choosing the right kayak. And more specifically, do you choose a pedal-driven kayak or a paddle-driven kayak? Now, when you're choosing a kayak, there are really three key questions that you have to answer from the outset. Do you want a hard shell kayak or a portable kayak? Do you want a sit inside kayak or a sit on top kayak? And thirdly, do you want a pedal-driven kayak or a paddle-driven kayak? And that's what this video is about. Now, to let you know from the outset, there really isn't a right or wrong answer to the question of whether you go pedal or paddle. But some people would argue with that because some people feel very strongly about their pedal kayaks or their paddle kayaks. But it really depends on you and what you want to get out of your kayak. And so we're going to dive into the pros and cons of both. But before I do that, I need to send a quick shout out of thanks to the sponsor of this episode, and that's Perception Kayaks. Perception makes the two kayaks I've got here, the Perception Showdown pedal kayak and the Perception Hang Time 11 paddle kayak. And the Hang Time is new for 2023, and I actually just tested this kayak on an amazing float trip down in North Alabama. And it was one of the best testing experiences I've ever had because I was forced to try to take a nap on a kayak. And I can tell you, you can nap in this kayak. And so it's a kayak for people that love to get on the water for a relaxing experience with friends and family. And it's not all about going a hardcore adventure. But to find out if this is the right kayak for you, I have done a full unbiased review of this kayak, and you can check it out. I'll leave a link in the description box down below. So let's start with, well, a factor that can answer the question for you right off the top, and that's where are you going to be using your kayak? The paddle kayak, it can go anywhere. You can do any type of paddling in a paddle kayak, not necessarily this paddle kayak, but a kayak that is driven by a paddle. Whereas a pedal-driven kayak does have some serious limitations, and those limitations include they don't do well in rivers with current. They don't do well in shallow water because the pedal-driven system can't function, or it'll be banging off rocks. It doesn't do well in thick vegetation, shallow, thick vegetation, because it'll get gummed up. And it doesn't do well in surf zones. Those are just examples of places where the pedal system is a real liability, and you really shouldn't be using a pedal-driven kayak. You should go for a paddle kayak. So now let's talk about boat control. A paddle kayak offers a lot more control. The paddle just gives you the ability to make small corrections, to quickly go in reverse, quickly change directions. You have so much more control in a paddle kayak than you do in a pedal kayak. That being said, there are some pedal kayaks that are remarkably maneuverable, but it really depends on the pedal kayak. Some pedal kayaks don't even have the ability to reverse. And so you can imagine how limiting that is. You get into a channel or a little stretch of water where you have to back up. You can't even turn around. Well, what are you going to do? Well, that's why even if you have a pedal-driven kayak, you need to carry a paddle with you. Now let's talk about the speed of a kayak. And this often comes as a surprise to people, but in general, a pedal-driven kayak is considerably faster than a paddle kayak. And that's not the case for all pedal kayaks and all paddle kayaks, but between these two kayaks right here, which are very similar widths, similar styles, and they're going to have the similar amount of drag when they're moving forward, the pedal-driven kayak, the Showdown, is going to be faster than the paddle kayak. Now, when it comes to comfort, there isn't a clear-cut winner here. Again, it's very much depends on you and what's a comfortable position for you. That being said, the edge goes to the pedal-driven kayak. And the reason for that is the ideal pedaling position is actually leaning back a bit in a bit of a lounging position with your feet pedaling in front of you. And for a lot of people, that lounging, that leaning back is a more comfortable position, especially for people with tight hamstrings. It really depends on the person though. Some people, the leaning back position in a pedal kayak can exacerbate back problems, whereas for other people, the sitting upright position of a paddle kayak can aggravate their back. So there's no clear-cut winner. You're gonna have to try both kayaks if comfort is a real big factor for you. Now, continuing on the discussion of comfort, something else to consider is shoulders. A lot of people have bum shoulders, and I think the answer is obvious there. A pedal-driven kayak is going to be the better choice if you have a bad shoulder. And again, not for everyone. Sometimes, for some people, the act of paddling actually feels good on bad shoulders, just keeping it in motion. But you'll have to try it and make that decision yourself. Then there's knees. That's another area where a lot of people have bad knees. And of course, with bad knees, the pedal-driven kayak can really aggravate knee issues. But at the same time, that motion can actually be beneficial to some people with knee problems. It feels good to move. You know, there's no clear-cut winner here. It really comes down to what's important to you, and how important comfort is to you. So now let's talk about an area where the pedal kayak has a distinct advantage, and that's for fishing and photography. The fact that you're pedaling, you're driving your kayak with your feet, and so your hands are virtually completely free to fish or take photos, or you hold a camera, that is a huge advantage. It should be noted though that you're not completely hands-free, because your hands do the steering of the kayak, and so you do have to take a hand and use the steering wheel every once in a while. The other caveat is you do lose some boat control with a pedal kayak. You have better boat control with a paddle kayak, and so when you're fishing or doing photography, you're just not going to have the same control of where you're pointed and how your boat's moving. But as a general rule, a real advantage to the pedal kayak over a paddle kayak for fishing and photography. So now let's talk what is probably the biggest factor for the most people: price. And straight up, there is a hefty premium that you pay for a pedal kayak. You could expect to pay $1,000 to $1,500 more for a pedal drive system in a kayak, and that's a lot of money. It's very worth it for people that really want a pedal driven system. And people, as a general rule, people that go to a pedal drive system, they end up loving the pedal drive system, but you pay a hefty premium for it. Now there's an argument, well, you save a little bit of money on a paddle, but no, that argument doesn't go, because you still need a paddle if you have a pedal driven kayak, because you can get into situations, well, for one, you could have a mechanical failure where your pedal drive system literally breaks. You could get stuck in water that's too shallow to use the pedal drive system. You might not just be able to turn around, and if your pedal drive system can't reverse, well, you're screwed. You need to paddle out of there. So you do pay a hefty premium for the pedal drive system. The question is it worth it to you? So the bottom line is there's no right or wrong. It really is a matter of personal preference. Combined with the paddling locations you're going to be in some cases, a pedal kayak just won't work, or it'll be the wrong choice. And then physical limitations is another factor that can decide which is the right kayak for you right off the bat. Personally, I've paddled for 35 years, and so I'm a paddler at heart. And so if I had to choose one kayak, I would go with a paddle kayak. That being said, I really do appreciate the benefits of a pedal kayak in the right situation. And when I'm fishing in particular, or filming, taking photos, I really do like a pedal-driven kayak. I'm glad I don't have to have only one kayak. If you can only have one kayak, you have a much more difficult choice. And so I hope this has helped you make that choice. If it has, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to Paddle TV if you haven't already, and stay tuned because we got lots more paddling tips, gear reviews, and paddling adventures coming your way. Oh, and leave a comment down below, share your thoughts and experience on pedaling versus paddling. I know some of you have some very strong opinions about it, and tell the world about them right down below.